So I think maybe one of the most interesting thing, well, not one of the most, but definitely an interesting thing to talk about here is the fact that we're thinking through this item where it is intelligent thing, right? This thing that takes actions, and that seems like it belongs at home. Right at home in, of course, all sorts of fantasy settings in which
Of course.
there are intelligent items, there are artifacts beyond the stretch of epochs. However, the idea that things actually do things, and that stuff does things,
Yeah.
is also not so strange for archaeological theory, right?
No, not at all. On the contrary.
No,
And
yeah. Go ahead.
especially like it was not always the case in archaeology that people perceived items as active, as things that do things, right? It was mostly understood as humans do things with items, and not so much things do
Right.
things with humans.
Yeah.
But
It's
this has changed.
people that make things, people that carry things, people that change things into other things.
Yes,
Basically,
people that use things.
exactly. However, I think somewhere, I mean, the very first moment that this sort of became a thing is a bit difficult to pinpoint, but
Yeah,
with its roots in ethnographies, particularly of Melanesia and Polynesia as well, anthropologists, followed by people that study material culture, such as archaeologists, but there's also people studying material culture in the present, right? Material
yeah,
culture studies.
yeah.
They started to consider the fact that objects also had agency, right? This
Yes.
capacity to act. And if you're within an ontology or the cosmovision of, for example, people living in Melanesia or also people in the Caribbean before, it's not such a strange thing to think that objects can also act, because you have all sorts of stories about it, and sometimes it just seems like objects act, right?
Yes.
And that's a thought that was actually taken up by anthropologists and archaeologists in their consideration of how objects make things do things, make us become things, etc.
Yes.
And I think it's been a very valuable insight. I think. What do you think about this sort of? I like it because I spent a good
Yes.
chunk of my PhD thinking about materiality, as it is
Yes.
called.
Yeah, I have. The reality is that I have kind of mixed feelings about the concept of materiality and about the concept of material agency. Not so much because I believe that this, because I don't think it's useful. I actually think it is a very useful tool in the whole archaeological theory toolset. But it's the kind of thing that I feel like it often ends up disconnecting us from what is actually happening. Uh, f- we, Sometimes we tend to theorize a little bit more than we should, in a way, um, about materiality, about what the objects are doing, and we tend to sort of skip the part where people are involved as well. It's a very difficult balance, I feel, to create without going too far into any discussion or into
Right.
any argument.
I like that you call it a balance, because one of the sort of strands within archaeology that was very much busy with this question is called symmetrical archaeology,
Hmm.
which is based on this Latourian type of reading of all sorts of different actors coming together in networks, actor network theory.
Yes.
So it is definitely supposed to be a balance, but often people end up skipping the thinking about people when they actually
Yes.
talk about material culture or things.
Yeah.
That said, I think it is a theory that goes a bit beyond the magical. I want to stress
Hmm.
that,
No. Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
how often is it not the case that we yell at our computer because it doesn't want to do
Yeah.
what we want it to do, or that we kick our car because
Yeah.
it's broken, or in fact while we're in our car and we feel a connection with the car that is stronger than with just a normal object, it becomes a thing for us, or another item that you care really, really deeply about. So it's
Yeah, no,
it's
it's
it's an interesting set of theories to consider.
but it's this kind of thing that to what extent we are defined by the objects around us, and to what extent we are the ones defining the objects around us, and this is the balance that needs to be sort of found.
Yes, for sure. And that is the question of archaeology almost. Aside
Yes,
from what histories have we gone through, the other big question is, how are we defined by the objects around us, and how do we define the objects around us? Because if you understand that connection, you also understand the histories that we have created with our
exactly.
objects.
Mhm.
All right.